Mr. Roland Weil. We'll talk about IATA's March 22 cargo market analysis first. The analysis reveals that air cargo volumes have fallen to pre-pandemic levels. Is this likely to look up by the end of the year? And if so, what factors are likely to drive recovery?
The cargo volumes on a global basis are down. Yes, that is correct. It's a result of multiple factors. Number one, there's some challenges on the shipping side. There's port congestions in parts of the world, some in the United States, some in Asia. Then, of course, we have the global pandemic, which is resulting in lockdowns of certain ports, seaports and airports. There's, as a result of the war in the Ukraine and the sanctions imposed on airlines from Russia, there is a reduced schedule of Russian airlines in the world. So it's a combination. It's multiple reasons. So as a result of that, COVID and the restrictions and the congestion, that of course is bringing the global shipped goods, the volumes down. The same goes for container shipping. This is also affected then. But it's basically the supply chains in the world. It's a little bit rough right now on the road. So when you're looking at what the forecast could be or might be, would I know that? I would be looking in the crystal ball and would be the forecaster. When we see the opening of the Chinese markets and the kind of releasing of the backlog that we see there from goods produced or goods not having been produced as a result of materials that are not there anymore. No? We see that for the manufacturing of the cars, for example. You have the same in India. You have big manufacturing lines that are slowing down. So once the COVID lockdowns in Asia are ending, and for example China is coming back up to normal or next to normal, then the volumes will increase. On the forecast on the war in Ukraine, this is a sad situation, but I don't see the end there, or there's no forecast available, or you don't know how this is going to develop. So I don't see those capacity coming back in the near future.
Now, if we talk about like what you mentioned about the war and the pandemic, prices of jet fuel have also witnessed turbulent times over the last few months with the geopolitical conflict and airspace closures. How is this impacting demand worldwide, and are things likely to change?
The demand for fuel you're mentioning, or the demand for goods?
Yeah.
Well, the fuel prices,
it impacting freight rates?
Countries like Russia are big oil and gas importers, and of course, if that supply slows down, then that'll have an impact, or it has an impact on the supply, and the price will go up, I think, even higher. How the airlines will cope with that and how the shipping industry will cope with that, I don't know. This is something that I cannot forecast, but the airlines, they have their tools. They are hedging fuel, so they could be on the safe side for quite some time. But on the other hand, if they buy fuel on the spot market and that fuel goes up, then of course you will have the immediate impact, and then that cost of fuel will eventually then reflect on the prices for the shipments. So that's something that you probably better ask an airline and the forwarding freight forwarders when it comes to their cars, rather than me. We have to suffer the consequences then from that by possible reduction in flights and in shipments for the goods. Yeah.
Also, in your panel discussion yesterday, you mentioned that freight forwarding and automation are the biggest enemies today. Can you elaborate a little on this?
Of course, we are in a digital world today, and when it comes to freight forwarding, a lot of the processes in the freight forwarding are still manual. There's many areas where data transfer is going versus various steps from the shipper to the forwarder or via the trucker to the forwarder to the cargo handler to the ramp handler to the airline, and then the same on the other side. So there's a lot of points there where systems need to talk to each other, and it's a very slow change process. I think there's no way around it. So eventually the cargo transport world will be digitized. So, but I see, and this is why I made that statement, I feel that especially the transport industry is reluctant, and it's not embracing that change that is there, that they don't see that in many cases as something that is helping them. It's more another burden that is being imposed almost on them, so they have to live with that or have to reprogram and change processes. So it's a very slow process. This is why I said it's a kind of like, I feel they are natural enemies, the automation and forwarding industry or the cargo industry as such. But of course we have made big steps forward over the last years when it comes to automation in customs processes, in transmission of data from one side of the globe to the others, when it comes to electronic airway bills, when it comes to, I mentioned that, customs declarations and dangerous goods declarations. So automation, there's no way around it, but it's an extremely slow process. And when I look back at the same process from a manual ticket for a passenger to an electronic ticket, that took several years, 7 or 8 years to get that off the ground. And people wanted to have their paper ticket in their hand. And even today you see that people don't want to have on their handheld the boarding pass for their flight. They want a paper boarding pass, which they throw 10 minutes after it has been printed away because they don't need it anymore, but they feel safer. And something like that is also happening in the logistics industry in some areas. But there's no way around it. But it's a slow process.
So is this like a mindset issue where people need to, change their mind?
It could be. To some degree, it's a mindset, but I think it's more it's a convenience because it works like that, and it has worked for many years like that. So why change the winning team? But I think the development that we see in the logistics area, people want to know, the shipper wants to know where their goods are. The shipper want to know when their goods are reaching. The shippers want to know if there's a delay, why there's a delay. They want to know if this is temperature sensitive cargo. They want to know, is there a temperature excursion? Is it always staying at the same levels? Things like that, So that you can speed up the shipment process by going digital. That goes without saying. And of course, the aim of us is to kind of reduce the total time it takes from production of a good till you open the box at your household. We're trying to bring that down because it's also, I don't want to say dead capital, but it's goods sitting idle in a container or in a truck.
So then would data collaboration help? Maybe, that would help seal the gaps. If there's a regulatory framework in place, maybe that would help.
If there's so many parties involved, who wants to create that regulatory framework? Where is it coming from? Who will take the blame for that? And this is very difficult. So we are seeing it we're seeing in many areas as a kind of a voluntary. There is some airlines that make certain electronic data transmission sectors mandatory already, so it's both. But overall, I think the industry has recognized that the way to go is electronic, and we will do everything we can as an airport operator to assist and facilitate the speeding up of that process. So when we're looking at on the airport, we have these tools available. We have a data highway that can connect the various members of the supply chain, and they can feed the data in there. Some are reluctant to share data because they feel this is unsafe, or it could be a security breach, and somebody could look at data that he or she is not supposed to look at. But that data highway, you can really ease your transportation, and you can. This goes for the communication between a shipper and the truck driver, between a truck driver and the gates of an airport, for example, to stay with us. So we know when that truck is coming. The customs, if they get that data submitted, they can look at what's in the truck or what's in the aircraft, and they can select if there's anything they want to see, or they want to have a look at the cargo, or they want to do spot checks, and that can all be done. And then you go to the warehouse, and you have a slot when you can unload or load your truck, and then and so on. And same on the other side when the cargo reaches the destination. This is all interacting, and I think I'm a big fan of that. But it's slow process. So far, we've come a big way. We've come a long way over the last couple of years. So I'm confident that pretty soon we'll be approaching like a very high percentage of utilization.
You also mentioned that yesterday that you're working on a cargo connection between Pune and Europe. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
As the airport, we are always looking at global cargo flow in our cases, and we're trying to facilitate that cargo flow. We're trying to attract airlines to serve certain routes where the industry has a demand, basically serving the global supply chains, and jointly with the airlines offer the capacity for those origin and destinations. When we're looking at, for us, the biggest market in Frankfurt is China. The number 2 market is the United States. This is also coinciding with the trade between Germany and those countries. And then in the next group down, we have an India. We have a Central America, Southern America. And as we are working with India since many, many years and try to develop the traffic flow both on the passenger side and on the cargo side between India and Frankfurt and via Frankfurt to Europe or the United States. So we see a high demand for a cargo connection between Frankfurt as the gateway to Europe and Pune mainly for automotive industry, which is it's like Motown in India, the Pune, with all the factories and the car suppliers and the supply chain members, components for the cars. Also, you have technology industry in that region. The Serum Institute of India is also calling Pune their home with a big factory, so there is demand for vaccinations, for medicines, for pharmaceuticals. So that is a good combination for a cargo flight. And the airport, being a former military airport, is in the process of setting itself up as a cargo hub, as a cargo airport, not cargo hub. And we are working together with the airport authorities of India. We are working together with the local Pune airport management. We're working with airlines. But it's kind of I don't want to call it a hobby, but this is something that I see as a vision. I would like to facilitate that flight and work together with all the members required on both ends to make that a reality. We're making big steps. There is, of course, the airport not being a big cargo gateway, so there's certain facilities that need to be established. There's certain processes that need to be set up, but we are getting there.
Also, is the air cargo industry facing a labor shortage currently, and what fueled this shortage?
Labor shortage, yes. It is mainly blue-collar workers as a result of the pandemic. Airports, and not only airports, but the industry as such, whether this is the shipping industry, the forwarding industry, but even if you look at restaurants and bars and retailing, everybody was winding down their operation for all the known reasons. So did the airports, and so did trucking companies, so did the freight forwarders. That goes for passengers as well as for the cargo side. Now that the traffic is coming back, that the travel restrictions are eased and reduced, passenger flow is coming back, but so we are. And for us, I can only speak for us as Frankfurt Airport. We are in the process of rehiring those, but it is challenging to find these blue-collar workers right now and to make the jobs in the aviation industry and in the airport and forwarding industry attractive. It's not necessarily a sexy job to work forwarding company or at an airport, but we lost many people as a result of separation programs, early retirement programs. So we did not terminate staffing, but we offered voluntary separation packages. So the numbers came down and now we are building them up. But if the market comes back faster, then we can build up. It will be challenging. And passenger volumes are growing fast again. So we have been able to, during the pandemic, to reallocate workforce from the passenger side to the cargo side. But now this labor force is going back to the passenger side. It's a slow process. People need to be trained because you're working in a secure environment, so you just cannot hire people. And they need to have certain standards on safety checks and training, as I mentioned. And it's slow, but yes, there is. We were able to maneuver through the ups and downs so far, and I hope it will stay like that, but it's not as relaxed as it used to be, correct.
And also, Talking about sustainability now, there is a big thrust towards going sustainable today. How can we incorporate sustainability into global supply chains and airports as well?
Yes, that's a big issue, and for us as an airport, we are of course making sure that we can be as sustainable as possible. We look at electric vehicles versus combustion engines. We are equipping our warehouses with solar rooftop coverage, so we are generating the energy we need to charge the electric vehicles. It doesn't help if you have an electric vehicle and the energy that you are getting to charge the batteries is coming from burning coal or oil. That is yes. Then the car is energy neutral, or is. But if the electric power comes off burning fossil fuels, that is not the way it needs to go. But we are making steps as for us. So more and more electric vehicles are coming into the operation. That goes also for the trucking company, to my knowledge, because you see hybrid cars that have both electric and standard engines, whether this is forklifts in the warehouses or whether this is, in some cases, autonomous driving on the apron of the airport with electric vehicles. So we are getting there, and the airport gets greener and greener.
And my last question now, what are the biggest challenges cargo operators face today?
The challenges an operator faces, some of them are, of course, as we talked about, side effects or effects of the global trade that is really on a bumpy ride right now. And of course, when you are seeing the trade flow demand declining, then your turnover is declining. It is really hard to predict where this is going to go and how fast it will recover. That if I knew that, it would help me a lot. So we are preparing for a moderate growth. But if the operator is faced with all of a sudden now, to stay with the example that I mentioned, if China reopens, then they will open the floodgates and cargo will come in big volumes. It's like almost a tidal wave that will come into Europe, and the same way on the way back, because then those factories that are currently closed in Asia, in China, will start producing again, and they need the materials and the supplies. So it goes in both directions. We hope we are ready for that wave, and but I think that is the biggest challenge. Operating costs as a result of, as you mentioned, for example, fuel. Operating costs as a result of having to pay higher salary to attract workers, and of course the pandemic and the war and those capacities. When you're looking at the aircraft market, the cargo demand is growing overall with e-commerce and different purchasing behavior of the people in the world. So looking at the airlines, looking at the cargo aircraft producers, conversion numbers are on the way up. New freighters are coming with 320 Airbus freighter conversions, with A350, with Boeing 777 conversions, with new 777s coming into the market. So it's growing overall, and I think the demand for air freight will still climb. So we are trying to get ready. So when everything is back to normal then, and we can build on the lessons learned during the pandemic and make the global cargo market better than it was before.
But then we're never going to return to how it used to be, right? We'll have to adapt to a new normal of sorts.
It will not reduce the challenge of adapting to changing markets. It will not be the same. It will not be the way it was. As I mentioned, even alone the booking behavior. Do you go to a store to buy goods the way you did it before the pandemic, or do you order via the internet? Do you want it shipped the next morning? Do you buy products from your country versus products made somewhere in the world, flown or shipped over the ocean or trucked or by train to your house? Is that going to go back to the way it was before? I don't think so. I think it will be people will go more shopping again, but I doubt that it will be the way it was before. So that change that we saw will stay to the biggest part.
Thank you so much, Mr. Weil.
Thank you.